I went to cover a major earthquake near Mexico City, and I was in the second earthquake. In the center of buildings, tall buildings, all swaying and creaking around me. That's our subject today on The Most Exclusive Club. It was 1983. I was living at the time in southwest Houston, Sugar Land, actually. And the NBC bureau that often used me was next to KPRC TV Channel 2 on the Southwest Freeway. So I suddenly got a call to run to the airport and get on a chartered jet. And I was dating a Hispanic woman at the time, and the bureau hired her to translate for me, to stay with me and translate. I didn't know what the story was initially, but as I raced toward the to Hobby Airport to get on a chartered jet, I was filled in that it was a major earthquake. So we got to the jet, loaded our gear with a producer named Ray Elberfeld. Great guy. And so there's Ray and Dell, my girlfriend at the time, me, and my sound tech was Wade Duncan, brother of Joe Duncan, one of my dearest friends who recently passed away. And we took off from Houston Hobby, headed toward Mexico City. Well, we were held up in the air over the border between Texas and Mexico. Air traffic control in Mexico City was not allowing anyone to come in. And so we began to circle. And we could hear over the radio on the airplane the other chartered jets and other news media who was trying to get into Mexico, and they were all being denied and were sent into a holding pattern. So we're in a holding pattern over the Rio Grande between Texas and Mexico. And for some reason, and I cannot explain it, Mexico City called us and gave us permission to come in and land. Nobody else. Now, they may have called others after we got in, but for some reason, we had the luck of the Irish, as they say, in that they called us. So we land at the major airport in Mexico City, and you could see the destruction from the air as you approached. Well, Ray, the producer, wanted to get up in the air in a small plane to take aerial footage. And he had come prepared with a lot of folding money because I'm sorry to say that's how you got some things done in Mexico. And with his folding money, he found a guy who owned a Cessna 206. And but no one was allowed to take off. This Cessna 206 guy had a friend in the tower. A little more folding money, and we were allowed to take off in that Cessna 206. It has a side baggage door, and we had removed the baggage door. And once up over Mexico City, I sat with my legs out of the door, baggage door, and Wade, my sound man, was holding onto my belt. And I'm shooting the only aerial footage of Mexico City still burning that I'm aware of. So we got that footage, went back to the airport, landed, and we got somehow the producer had gotten a vehicle for us, and we were running around the city shooting footage of destruction. In fact, the picture for the title of this podcast, The Most Exclusive Club, that picture is me in front of a collapsed building, and beyond it, some buildings heavily damaged. That's in Mexico City, 1985. So we worked all day into the night, worked all day, and then we got a break. As I said earlier, not all of Mexico City was destroyed. We got a hotel room in a high-rise area of Mexico City. Our room was on the 16th floor, and that's... I think that was counted after the few floors of parking garage. I don't know. But we're way up there. So Dell and Wade and I, after 2 days of working and no sleep, were able to sit down to a decent dinner. We finished. And we walked over to the elevator. I had pushed the up button when two ladies ran by me with fear in their faces. I turned around, and Dell was behind me, and she's reaching out to me, and she says, "It's an earthquake. Let's go." And then she said, "The camera. Get the camera." And I said, expletive, the camera, 16 floors up. I'm not going to go up in an elevator during an earthquake. So we're all running out into the street, and it's dark. It's evening, and the ground is moving slowly 3 feet back and forth. I was watching the wheels on a car roll with the ground moving 3 feet one way and then reversing directions and moving 3 feet the other way. And we were in the middle of an intersection surrounded by tall buildings, all creaking and leaning. And if you ever have a feeling that you're about to die, you'll know it. And I had that feeling very strong because there's nowhere to run. All those tall buildings are all around you. Where do you go? The most helpless feeling I've ever experienced. And the second earthquake, and it was not an aftershock, I found out later, it was another earthquake. It registered 7.2 or 7.3. I was sure I was going to die. I was sure we were all going to die. And the earthquake lasted about a minute, and that minute seemed like 10 minutes or 20 minutes. It was the longest minute I can ever remember in my life. And so we're, forget about getting any rest. We're off shooting the city and the chaos and the ambulances and the gurneys going back and forth and people searching for loved ones in rubble. And that's what it was like. At one point, the next day or two, I forgot the exact timing, I was assigned to Tom Brokaw, and we were to walk in the rubble of the city with the president of Mexico at the time, which is what we did. Actually, I was one of two cameramen assigned to that, My camera was to always be pointed at Tom, and the other guy was always supposed to be pointed to the president of Mexico. And I later got a picture from the Mexican government, and someone sent me a pamphlet, a small publication that they had made about the earthquake, and someone had taken a picture of Tom, me, Wade, and the president of Mexico, and I got it in that publication from the Mexican government. I don't know who sent it to me later while I was back in Houston. So for days, we walk around and you see rubble and you see parts of people, heads, arms, legs, and everywhere there were rescue crews with dogs trying to find those who survived. Well, on the 8th day of being there, we were sent, my sound man and I, were sent to a collapsed maternity hospital. We set up in the field. We had masks on, Wade and I, and there was a little machine that we sort of sat on. I was on top with my camera, shooting the workers digging in the maternity hospital. Now, the collapsed maternity hospital was a sight to see. Imagine a stack of pancakes. That's what the floors look like when they collapse together. What was between the floors, what was between the floors was just crushed. And it looked like a giant square pancake breakfast with all the floors, I don't know, 6 or 8 floors, laying one on top of the other with parts of people sticking out along the edges. But at one point, they brought a baby out. It was gray, but it was intact. And they immediately started working on that baby on a field table just a few feet from me. We went over, and I was able to shoot video over the shoulder of one of the people working on that baby who looked dead. And they're working on him, and after a few moments, his little legs started kicking, and the baby was alive. Unbelievable. I was kind of welling up inside. I looked down at my sound man, Wade, and he had a tear going down his cheek. But that baby was alive. And they got him moving and kicking and breathing right and cleaned him up, and it was like he was never in the earthquake to begin with. He was one of the lucky ones that was in a crevice in a space somewhere in the rubble. And so we interviewed a doctor about that rescue. As we set up the interview right next to the collapsed maternity hospital. And the doctors said that, they stick probes into the wreckage. They're flexible, got a TV camera on the end, and they were looking around in the darkness, and suddenly a pair of eyes opened right at the camera. It froze everybody looking at it. So they were able to go in and get that baby and bring him out and revive him. And so we asked the doctor, that baby was caught in that wreckage for 8 days. It should have died. And the doctor explained that the reason it didn't die is because, this being a maternity hospital, babies newly born are used to the darkness and the silence, and there's nothing wrong with that to them. They don't have any fear. And an adult caught in that rubble will dehydrate very fast because they're very afraid. You can't help but be afraid. But if you ever get caught in a collapse and you want to last the longest, try to calm your fears, because it turns out that being afraid dehydrates you. The babies not being afraid did not dehydrate so fast. And so 8 days later, this baby was alive and kicking. And it's the most amazing story of my experience in Mexico City. If you watch the video version of this on my YouTube channel, themostexclusiveclub.com, I will have a picture of me at that scene, although all you see is me on top of a machine and my soundman below, and we're wearing masks because of the dust. And what else will I have about Mexico City? We worked so hard that we hardly took any pictures, didn't think to take pictures. But what an amazing story. We were there a total of 13 days in Mexico City, shooting that earthquake. That was 1985. And that's just one of the many stories I have to tell, having been a freelance network news cameraman for 38 years. And thank you for tuning in and listening to my stories. I don't have a schedule for publishing these stories, but I'm really going to try to get one out every 2 or 3 days. So look for it. And thank you for tuning in to The Most Exclusive Club.